He had been working at the same church for 3 years, but no one even knew his name. When people said, "Hello," he would just nod his head. Even the pastor wondered, why is this man so cold? Until an electrical fire broke out during Sunday service. This cold man immediately sprang into action, systematically evacuated 180 people, and activated the fire suppression systems. That's when they learned he had worked 28 years as a fire department chief, and his silence came from trauma. Before we continue, tell us where you're watching from, and if this story moves you, don't forget to subscribe, because I've got something special prepared for you tomorrow. On a chilly October morning in suburban Chicago, St. Peter's Church, a beautiful Gothic building surrounded by golden and crimson oak trees, prepared for its weekly service. Sunlight filtered through stained glass windows, casting colorful patterns across the pews. With 180 devoted members, the church was known for its warm, close-knit community where generations worshiped together and everyone knew each other well. Thomas Mitchell, the 55-year-old maintenance worker, arrived at 7 a.m. every day, parking his old pickup in the same spot. Broad-shouldered and reserved, he never made eye contact or started conversations. When greeted, he only nodded silently and carried on with his duties, keeping the church in pristine condition. Despite their values of acceptance, many congregants found his behavior puzzling. "He's been here 3 years, and I've never heard him say more than a word," said Patricia Adams, the church secretary. "It's like he's afraid of people." A longtime volunteer, Patricia genuinely wanted to include Thomas, but couldn't break through his silence. Church board member William Carter, a successful businessman, voiced concerns about Thomas's silence during meetings. "I've tried multiple times to speak with him about maintenance and future projects," he said. "But it's like talking to a wall. He's cold, distant, and completely unresponsive." Though William initially supported hiring Thomas due to his flawless work ethic, after 3 years of near-total silence, he began to question whether someone so socially withdrawn belonged in a church environment. Pastor Stephen Hughes, the dynamic 50-year-old leader of St. Peter's, was even more outspoken. "He works in a sacred space, yet never prays, never joins our services, never engages with the church community," he shared privately with the board. "I'm not sure he has any faith or even belongs here." Unbeknownst to them, Thomas overheard every word. The church's thin walls carried their voices clearly. Yet he never responded, never defended himself, and never explained the reasons behind his silence. What the congregation didn't know was that Thomas Mitchell wasn't an ordinary maintenance worker with social anxiety or psychological problems. For 28 years, he had worked for the Chicago Fire Department, rising through the ranks from a rookie firefighter to become one of the most respected and accomplished fire chiefs in the department's history. During his career, he had personally responded to over 3,000 fire calls, supervised countless emergency operations, and developed innovative firefighting strategies that have been adopted by fire departments across the Midwest. For the final 12 years of his career, he had served as fire chief, responsible for managing a department of 200 firefighters and emergency responders, coordinating with other city agencies during major disasters, and making split-second life-or-death decisions under extreme pressure. Throughout his distinguished career, Thomas had extinguished hundreds of dangerous fires in residential buildings, commercial structures, industrial facilities, and wildland areas. He had personally rescued dozens of people from burning buildings, including children, elderly individuals, and disabled persons who couldn't evacuate on their own. However, the traumatic event during his final assignment had completely changed his life and personality. In December 2019, during a massive apartment building fire in one of Chicago's densest residential neighborhoods, Thomas had led the emergency response to save residents from a 6-story building that had been consumed by flames due to faulty electrical wiring and inadequate fire safety systems. Despite his team's heroic efforts and professional expertise, the building's structural integrity had failed catastrophically, causing a partial collapse that trapped 8 children in a section of the building that became inaccessible to rescue teams. Technically and objectively, the tragedy wasn't Thomas's fault. The building collapse had occurred so rapidly and unexpectedly that no fire department in the world could have prevented it. Fire safety experts, structural engineers, and independent investigators all concluded that Thomas and his team had performed exceptionally well under impossible circumstances. But Thomas blamed himself completely and utterly for the 8 young lives that were lost. The faces of those children haunted his dreams. Their names echoed in his mind during quiet moments, and the weight of what he perceived as his failure crushed his spirit and destroyed his ability to function normally. The department psychiatrist, Dr. Elizabeth Morrison, had spent months working with Thomas and had provided a comprehensive evaluation and treatment plan. "Thomas, you need to understand that you've dedicated 28 years of your life to saving people," she had explained during one of their therapy sessions. "You've personally rescued hundreds of individuals and prevented countless deaths through your professional expertise and courageous actions. This single tragic incident, as horrible as it was, doesn't erase the thousands of lives you've saved throughout your career." Despite Dr. Morrison's professional guidance and the support of his colleagues and supervisors, Thomas couldn't overcome his feelings of responsibility and failure. After extensive consultations with medical professionals and department administrators, Thomas had made the difficult decision to take early retirement from the Chicago Fire Department. The maintenance position at St. Peter's Church had seemed perfect when he learned about the opening. The work was routine and predictable, requiring technical skills that he possessed, but without the life-or-death pressure that had defined his fire service career. The environment was peaceful and calm, with no emergencies, no sirens, no desperate situations requiring split-second decisions. But despite his retirement from active fire service, Thomas's professional instincts and expertise couldn't be turned off simply because he was no longer wearing a firefighter's uniform. Every day when he arrived at St. Peter's Church, he automatically conducted systematic safety inspections that were based on 28 years of experience identifying fire hazards and emergency response challenges. He would carefully examine the church's electrical installations, looking for signs of overheating, damaged insulation, overloaded circuits, or other conditions that could cause fires. He would test the heating and ventilation systems to ensure they were operating safely and efficiently. He would inspect the building's structural elements, checking for potential weaknesses that could affect evacuation routes during emergencies. These inspections weren't part of his official job description as a maintenance worker, but Thomas performed them automatically because his training and experience had made fire safety as natural as breathing. The congregation interpreted Thomas's meticulous attention to safety details as obsessive behavior, not understanding that they were witnessing the application of professional-level fire safety expertise. On Sunday morning, October 15th, the autumn air was crisp and clear as congregation members arrived for the 10 a.m. worship service. Thomas had arrived at his usual time of 7 a.m. to complete his routine maintenance tasks and safety inspections before the congregation arrived. As he was checking the church's electrical systems, he discovered a serious problem that immediately triggered his professional alarm bells. The main electrical panel, located in the basement utility room, showed clear signs of dangerous overheating. The old insulation around several major cables was brittle and discolored, indicating that the wiring was operating far above safe temperature levels. Thomas knew from his decades of experience that this type of electrical problem could quickly escalate into a catastrophic fire that would spread rapidly through the old wooden structure of the church building. He tried desperately to warn Pastor Hughes about the electrical hazard, but his trauma-induced communication problems made it impossible to articulate the urgency and technical details of the situation. When he approached the pastor and pointed toward the electrical panel, trying to explain the danger through gestures and facial expressions, Pastor Hughes completely misunderstood his attempts at communication. "Thomas, what's the problem?" Pastor Hughes asked with barely concealed impatience. "Is there a cleaning issue that needs to be addressed? I don't have time right now to discuss routine maintenance problems." Thomas pointed more urgently toward the basement area, trying to convey the serious nature of the hazard, but he couldn't force the words out of his mouth. His attempts to speak resulted only in frustrated gestures that Pastor Hughes interpreted as confusion. Feeling desperate and helpless, Thomas wrote a simple danger, electrical warning note and taped it prominently next to the electrical panel, hoping that someone with technical knowledge would see it and understand the urgency of the situation. At exactly 10 a.m., the Sunday worship service began with its traditional opening hymn, and the church sanctuary filled with the beautiful sounds of 180 voices joined together in praise and worship. Thomas remained in the basement utility area, continuing his maintenance duties, but keeping a careful watch on the increasingly dangerous electrical situation. At precisely 10:30 a.m., Thomas's worst fears were realized. The overloaded electrical panel finally failed catastrophically, sending a shower of sparks across the utility room as the aged insulation ignited and began burning rapidly. In that critical moment, Thomas Mitchell stopped being a traumatized, silent maintenance worker and instantly transformed back into the experienced, professional fire chief who had spent 28 years saving lives in emergency situations. His first action was to immediately shut off the main electrical breaker, cutting power to the entire building and preventing the fire from being fed by continued electrical current. His second action was to quickly analyze the church building's structure and fire behavior patterns, using his professional expertise to predict how the fire would spread and which areas would remain safe for evacuation routes. Thomas ran up the basement stairs and burst into the sanctuary where 180 people were peacefully participating in worship, completely unaware of the deadly danger developing below them. For the first time in 3 years, his voice returned with crystal clarity and commanding authority. Everyone remained calm and listened carefully, he shouted in the strong, confident voice of a professional emergency responder. There's a fire in the building, and we need to evacuate immediately. The congregation was stunned not only by the announcement of danger, but by the fact that Thomas, who had never spoken more than a few words in 3 years, was suddenly taking command of the situation with obvious expertise and professional competence. Do not use the main entrance, Thomas continued with decisive authority. The fire is spreading in that direction, and that exit will soon be unsafe. We will use the side doors and rear exit for evacuation. Pastor Hughes stared at Thomas in complete amazement. Thomas, how do you know? I am a fire chief with 28 years of experience, Thomas declared firmly, his trauma-induced silence completely overcome by the emergency situation. Your safety depends on following my instructions exactly. The transformation in Thomas was so dramatic and convincing that the entire congregation immediately recognized his authority and expertise. Thomas quickly organized the systematic evacuation using principles he had learned and practiced throughout his career. The first 60 people will exit through the right side door, he announced, pointing to Patricia Adams. Patricia, you take charge of this group and make sure the elderly and children go first. The second group of 60 people will use the left side door, he continued, gesturing to William Carter. William, you coordinate this group and maintain order. The remaining people will follow me to the rear exit. Stay close, stay together, and do exactly what I tell you. Throughout the evacuation process, Thomas continued providing guidance and reassurance. His 28 years of experience allowed him to monitor the fire's progression and adjust the evacuation plan accordingly. In exactly 3 minutes, all 180 congregation members were safely evacuated from St. Peter's Church without a single injury. Thomas was the last person to exit the building, carrying a portable fire extinguisher that he had used to slow the fire's spread and protect the evacuation routes. When the Chicago Fire Department arrived on the scene, they found Thomas waiting to brief them with professional-level information. The fire originated from electrical failure in the main panel located in the basement utility room, he reported. Water damage can be minimized by focusing suppression efforts on this specific area. Fire Chief Robert Anderson immediately recognized Thomas from his years of service. Thomas Mitchell, our former chief. What are you doing here? I work as maintenance staff here now, Thomas explained. I'm retired from active duty. Outstanding work on the evacuation, Chief Anderson said with genuine admiration. You saved every single life in that building. As the fire department worked to extinguish the remaining flames, the congregation gathered in the parking lot, still processing what they had witnessed about Thomas. Pastor Hughes approached Thomas with profound respect. "Thomas, I had no idea about your background. You've been protecting us all along, haven't you?" Thomas nodded quietly. "I've been checking for fire hazards every day for 3 years. I saw the electrical problem this morning and tried to warn you, but I couldn't find the words. Why didn't you ever tell us about your fire service background?" Patricia Adams asked with tears in her eyes. Thomas's voice became soft and filled with pain. "In my final assignment as fire chief, I failed to save 8 children in an apartment building fire. The trauma from that experience took away my ability to speak normally. I blamed myself for their deaths." Helen Washington, who had been among Thomas's harshest critics, took his hands in hers. "Thomas, we called you cold and antisocial. We had no idea you were carrying such pain while trying to protect us. Please forgive our ignorance." "There's nothing to forgive," Thomas replied with the first genuine smile anyone had seen from him in 3 years. "You couldn't have known what I was going through. I just wanted to use my skills to keep you safe." The fire department controlled the blaze within 30 minutes, and thanks to Thomas's intervention, the damage was limited and didn't spread throughout the church building. A week later, St. Peter's Church held a special ceremony for Thomas to honor his quiet heroism and service. Pastor Hughes emphasized that Thomas had protected the congregation despite his trauma over the past 3 years and stressed the importance of understanding people before judging them. The church honored Thomas with a plaque inscribed with the words, "Our silent protector, our hero." From that day onward, Thomas became more open, his trauma began to heal, and he continued to serve at the church as both a care worker and a security consultant. See you in the next videos. Don't forget to like and subscribe.